First of all, if you haven't signed in, please sign in if you're a committee member. So I'm pretty excited for tonight. I think we're going to have a really good night. I think number one is going to be a good group discussion. Number two, I've got some exciting news to announce about our future. And I think that I think we're all going to walk away from tonight with some good ideas and some good ideas to present to the council and to the residents of Brandon. So again, this is our second meeting of the Brandon Water Development Committee. I appreciate everyone coming and taking time out of your day, and residents, while I'm on the subject, anybody that is not on the committee that's in this room is welcome to ask questions. Just please raise your hand and we can address questions as we go through. So a couple things. The first item on the agenda I have is opening thoughts, and there's a couple things I want to just kind of briefly mention. I haven't been the most open-minded person about our water quality in the past 2 months. I said I have, but I haven't. I've spoken with a lot of residents, and I've had people contact me and myself reach out to them. And to make a long story short, I've done a lot of speaking. Tim and I have done a lot of speaking. We've kind of butted heads in the beginning, but I think that has definitely changed now. And I do want to correct myself, because last meeting I said something to the effect that I think our water quality is okay. Where I was coming from that is, you know, the city of Brandon, just like every other city in the state, is pretty heavily regulated by the state. Our water is tested on a continuous basis, and we are passing those tests. And I apologize for saying, you know, I think that's good enough, because I don't think it is. I think enough people have spoken, and I'm here to listen, and I'm here to tell you my mentality on some of that has definitely changed. And if you don't think our water is good enough, by gosh, I want you to speak up, tell us, and let's do something about it. But let's do something about it in a proactive, cohesive manner as a group, not only just as a group, but as a city. This water discussion has become a pretty big topic in the town here, and I think we have a lot of people interested in this, which is fantastic. And I think that a lot can be done, a lot can be learned through this group, through some of the stuff that we're going to do, and I couldn't be more excited for what's to come. So, with that being said, we are going to here in just a few minutes, we're going to discuss water conservation, and I've got a guest speaker, Mr. Frost and Mr. Stefanich from Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls has kind of been considered a leader when it comes to water conservation for a city their size, and to be honest, some of the members reached out to me and said, hey, I think this might be a good idea to bring these guys in to talk about water conservation. So I listened, you said it, and I listened, and that's where we're at. After that, we're going to have a group discussion on conservation efforts, maybe some of the things that we can implement in the town, in the city, and bring them to the council meetings and try and get something done about them. After that, we're going to have a mission statement group exercise. Again, someone on the committee, Angie Nemmers, reached out to me and said, hey, Don, I don't mind helping out with this. I can set up a group exercise, and I absolutely encourage you guys to do that throughout the next few months or however long we meet. I said, absolutely. I'm gonna channel her excitement for this and let her run. So we're gonna do that as a group and hopefully come up with a mission statement. And I'm very, very excited that she reached out and contacted me wanting to do that. I'm very happy about that. So after that, we're just going to have kind of an open group discussion about some of the remaining topics and maybe a timeline that we want to have all of this done within. And then we're going to kind of conclude and come up with some just kind of a recap as far as what we want to bring to the council meeting when it comes to water conservation. So with that being said, any questions?
So I guess the one topic that I'd like to bring up here at the beginning is we've talked a lot about what we're capable of. We had discussions last week about 1.8 million gallons a day being sustainable. And I guess I started doing some research, and I got a little bit concerned about, is that 1.8 going to be able to be continued to be sustained as we look at the next summer. And really, we don't have a backup plan right now when it comes to that. So adding the HMO system, it's my understanding that that's going to change our back flush rates. Instead of back flushing every 24 hours, it's going to be 14 hours. And when we start doing that, that impacts our overall plant efficiency. And as it stands today, we don't have a backup plan. So we're still in a time that we could potentially do something before spring with respect to connecting to our rural water. I'm not saying let's start using their water. I'm not saying make agreements to buy their water. I'm saying, can we make the pipes connect? And I think that there's some merit to that, especially with the lack of backup. I don't want to be in a position early spring when it's starting to come up, and if we have a dry year, I mean, there's lots of things we can do conservation, but at this point, we really don't have a backup, and that's concerning to me. So I don't know what the group's thoughts are on potentially looking at making that connection to rural water, but I know that MCWC is more than willing to work with us. I've had numerous conversations with their team, and it's doable. It's not a permanent it's not an immediate solution for every bit of water that we have. Everyone knows that. They can only do about 1 million. But what's our backup plan right now? There isn't one, and that's where my fear comes in. So I guess I'd like to see the feedback from the group. Maybe not now, let's get through conservation, but understand if that makes sense and if that's something we should bring to the council to see if we can get approval on that part of the project, and just a really simple preliminary phase of let's connect the pipes.
I don't know if there's some apprehension with the city as a whole to connect to rural water. I mean, I found that in the real estate side of it, they're kind of apprehensive to do any kind of connects to rural water. So I don't know if the city council really wants to do that.
My understanding, that's not the issue. I think they're more than willing to, MCWC is more than willing to work with us. We've reached out to them quite a few years ago to talk to them about that. And, you know, Raleigh, your maintenance staff currently have that relationship with them. If we have a need or backup, so-called backup plan, they have talked to them about that. And there is a place where they've talked about where they would connect up on an emergency backup situation. So I don't think there's any apprehension there with the MCWC as far as wheeling water to us.
Are we just talking about emergency backup?
Right.
Just emergency? I mean,
At
what I'm
this-
seeing.
I was. Yeah,
Okay,
that
what I'm
was my-
seeing down the
Right.
road is we have a 20-year plan, and we're finding these aquifers, these small aquifers, but how long, I mean, are we going to continue to have to dig new wells in just this area? Because it sounds like there's not a lot of support from the landowners to sell to the Brandon city. So what are we going to do in 30 years, or what are we going to do in 50 years? That just seems like we're a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid at this point.
Right.
And I might be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just, that's what I'm hearing.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, I think
Okay.
that what our intention was, the MCWC was a backup plan at this point. Long term, obviously, we were looking for additional water, I think was what the intention was, whether it was shallow or deep aquifer. And maybe that's even a long-term, agreement with MCWC or another provider, whether that's Lincoln County or Lewis and Clark or City of Sioux Falls. And
So,
Can I make
yeah.
a suggestion? This
Yeah.
sounds like an open discussion kind of topic.
Mm-hmm.
For our speakers and things like that, would
Mm-hmm.
it be prudent for us to then get on to the agenda at hand?
Yep,
And begin with water conservation?
Yep.
And then
Yep.
when it comes time for open discussion, then we can have an open discussion without wasting their time?
Yep, I was just about to say, so I'm, first of all, I am glad people kind of are thinking out loud here, but we do have an agenda to stick to. I think there's some good ideas that have been mentioned, and what I would like to do is continue this either later tonight or, more importantly, at the council meeting as a topic at our next council meeting, if that's okay with everybody. So, but yes, Mindy, for now, let's get back to our schedule, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and we're ready to hear what you have to say.
Are we ready to go? All right. My name is Tim Stefanich. I'm the environmental engineer with the Sioux Falls Water Division. I have been there for 26 years. Mainly my job is the regulatory side of drinking water. As a large water system, we tend to have a lot more regulations under the state and the Environmental Protection Agency that we have to deal with than smaller communities. And so pretty much that's my job, but part of that when I first started was a conservation program. And so I was around when this program actually started. Darren Fries, who is my co-presenter today, he is actually in charge of the program right now, and so he will give you kind of a perspective what's happening right now. All right? One of those things that they always say is kind of know your audience. And I know a lot of you people are professionals. Some of you know and understand water. Some of you do not. So in my presentation, I might be a little on the lower levels, you know, so that people actually understand what conservation is, and then try to go through what we actually did and some of the things that we learned in our program. And we do appreciate that you invited us to your meeting today, and hopefully we can prevent some of those pitfalls that we went through as you guys develop your program. Okay, so what is conservation? Well, according to the American Water Works Association, it is any beneficial reduction in water use or in water losses. So in essence, water conservation programs emphasize lasting day-to-day improvements. It's not something like a lawn watering ban, you know, for maybe a month, something like that. This is conservation program as you are trying to reduce day-to-day water usage by your customers. So basically, why conserve water? Okay, well, number one is it's going to lower your water usage. Okay, you're going to have lower water production costs because you don't have to treat as much water. You're going to have lower electrical costs. You're not going to have to pump that water out into the system. You're going to have possibly deferred capital costs. So if you're not treating as much water, your plant doesn't have to be as big, you don't have to make those improvements in your system, so you can maybe plan a little bit more for some of those capital costs. You can improve your supply reliability. You're not pumping the heck out of it, you know, 24/7 during the summertime. You can actually rest some of those wells, allow them to recharge, and then turn them back on again. A lot of times that will help improve your efficiency in those wells. You could potentially cut your wastewater flows and your treatment costs because a lot of your water usage that you're conserving may be in the home. When you use it in the home, it goes into the wastewater system. So you're going to reduce your wastewater flows coming out of your home. So, you know, you may reduce your treatment costs for wastewater. Also, customers may have lower utility bills. That includes water and wastewater. Okay, so those are the benefits for conservation. Why not conserve water? Lower utility revenues. Okay, you're not treating as much water. People aren't buying as much water. Your revenue into your water utility is going to be lower. It will affect you. Okay, so in essence, what may end up having to happen is you're going to raise rates. So people are going to question, well, I'm trying to conserve water to lower my water bill, but all of a sudden you're turning around and you're raising rates. All right? Additional staff time required to monitor the program. Are you going to do it with in-house people? Do they have the time to do it? Or are you going to hire somebody, maybe part-time, maybe full-time? Something you got to think about. The other thing is reduce scouring flow into sanitary sewers. You have less flow going into your sanitary sewers. Your dilution is down. You're not able to push those solids down that sanitary sewer. You may end up having to come in and clean those sanitary sewers more frequently because you have less flow going down your sanitary sewer, and your wastewater is actually going to be higher strength because your dilution water is gone. Okay, some things to think about. Conservation programs can be designed to reduce average demand That's over a whole, let's say, a month, a year, whatever time frame you want to look at, or a peak demand, something that you may be dealing with on a daily basis, a weekly basis, something like that. So we can do one or the other, or both, depending upon how you set up your conservation program. The cheapest water you will find is the water you already have in your system. So if you've already treated it, you've put it out in your system, that's the cheapest water. Try to find ways to conserve that water. Okay? Instead of having to go out and buy, get another source, something like that. Use what you have already. So, looking back, why did Sioux Falls have to have a conservation program? Okay, with our population growth, with our continued increased water usage, we were going to outpace the capacity of the local water supply during dry and drought conditions. And then there was the uncertainty because we were a part of the Lewis and Clark system. We figured we were going to have Lewis and Clark water at some time, but we had no idea when that was actually going to happen. So if we take a look at water usage, and we're going to take you back 15 years plus. This graph is from 1988 up to about 2002. The red line is the population of the city of Sioux Falls. And so we were going up in population 2.5% per year. In the early or the late 1980s, water usage was pretty stable, and then all of a sudden in the 1990s, we started to skyrocket. Okay, water usage went up quite fast, and so as to where this is the total amount of water that we treated on a yearly basis. So in 2002, we were up to 8 billion gallons of water treated through our treatment plant in 1 year. That's about 22 million gallons on average on a daily basis. Okay, so during a drought or a dry period, we were concerned that we weren't going to have enough water to be able to provide enough water to our customers. Now, if you take a look at peak day water demands, that's the instantaneous amount on a daily basis. Okay, in 2002, the most water we ever treated in 1 day was 52 million gallons per day. Now, the red line across the top, that's the water treatment plant capacity, 54 million gallons per day. So in essence, in 2002, we were 2 million gallons away per day of exceeding the capacity of our treatment plant. We were just keeping up with what our customers were using out in the system. So in essence, we knew that that was going to drive us to a conservation program. We had to do something. We had to lower our water demands somehow, some way. So we started to take a look at a conservation program. Also, the projections for population were continued growth, 2.5% per year. So by 2035, we're looking, maybe 275,000 people. So we're still continuing to look at conservation programs and looking for water sources that are going to help us, far into the future. So water conservation measures, they are an action, a behavioral change, a device, a technology, improved design or process implemented to reduce water loss, waste, or use. Okay? So the conservation measures that we looked at, and there are many, many things out there that you can look at, but we were looking at utilizing high efficiency water fixtures and appliances. Okay, they were starting to develop low flow toilets, high efficiency washing machines, things like that. Those were starting to come out on the market. We wanted to take a look at those things, reduce our base flow, for each of our customers. We also looked at water rates. We at that time were at a single tier. So in essence, everybody, didn't matter how much you used, it was a single base rate. It was a single rate per, and we use 100 cubic feet. We go off of cubic feet. Some cities go off of gallons. We go off of cubic feet. So 1 unit for us is 748 gallons or 100 cubic feet. Okay, that's our unit that we bill off of. So what we wanted to look at was possibly increasing block. The more you use, the more you're going to pay. We also wanted to look at lawn watering restrictions And then also we wanted to reduce our non-revenue water. Non-revenue water is, what you want to do is you want to take a look at how much water are you putting out of your treatment plant, how much are you billing for. So usually you can do that on a monthly basis. If you're billing on a monthly basis, you know how much water you pumped out of your treatment plant, how much did you bill for that month. Take a look at all of your water bills throughout, the entire city, compare the two, how well do they add up? It's that non-revenue water that you're not making any money off of. You want to take a look at, where's that going? Do I have leaks out in the system? Am I providing water to people that aren't paying for it? Find out where that stuff is going. And then public education is a big part of it. You want to have your public understand exactly what water conservation is, what your issue is, what you're trying to get them to do, and how to do it. So where do we use our water? And this is one of the things I always talk about. Young kids are unbelievable about the amount of information that they're just literally a sponge. And we do a water festival every year at the University of Sioux Falls, and I believe the Brandon schools, they're fourth graders, and I believe some of their classes actually attend the water festival. And so I talk to them about some of these things, about where do we actually use our water. And so you take a look at the inside of your house. Where do you use the water? Okay, does anybody know what uses the most water in our house? What fixture, what appliance, what do we do that uses the most water in our house on a daily basis? Anybody know? Anybody want to guess?
Bathe?
No? What?
Toilet.
That's exactly right. Flushing the toilet. Biggest water user in the house. Okay? There was actually a study done by the American Water Works Association back in 1999, and this was before the high efficiency craze came about for reducing water usage. They looked at where's the water used throughout the house. Okay? Toilets, 27%. Clothes washers, 22%. Showers, 17%. Faucets, 16%. Okay? They basically broke it down, and they did this across the entire country. And they looked at different communities and different households, and they were amazed at how similar different communities. It didn't matter if you were in the Southwest to the Northeast. Everybody pretty much used the same amount or in the same percentages of water in their homes. Okay, so you can take a look at that and you can say, where can we make improvements on that? Where can we reduce our water usage? Okay, now, as I said, this was in 1999, and this was high efficiency units. So now that we've got the high efficiency washers, the low flow toilets, we've got the low flow shower heads and all of that stuff. So the question comes in, how has that changed our water usage in the house? Well, guess what? 2016, the American Water Works Association Research Foundation again did another study across the country, and they took a look at it and says, how have these high efficiency units changed our water usage in our house? Well, it's actually reduced the amount of water that we've used, but on a percentage for each of the appliances and everything else, it really hasn't changed any of the percentages. Okay, everything is still pretty much the same. All right. The one thing I want to show you on this is take a look at the leaks. 14% of the water usage in a house is through a leak. Through public education, trying to tell your people, look for leaks in your house. The biggest leaker is probably the toilet, because nobody really looks at it. All right? So try to educate them on how to reduce your leaks in your toilet. They actually have little dye tablets you can put in the back of the toilet tank, and if the dye flows into the bowl, your flapper valve is leaking. Okay? Because most of the time you're not home enough to hear the toilet just kind of run for a while and then shut off. The other big thing is, if the float isn't set right, set too high, the water flows over the overflow. You don't hear it, but it's running. Okay? Those are the things that if you educate your consumers, those are the things that they can look for in trying to reduce their water usage, and it also reduces your effect on your water treatment plant and the amount of water that you use. Now, that's inside the house. Now, if you add outside the house, seasonal usage outside, lawn watering, everything like that, is about 26% across the country. Okay, some areas might be a little higher, some might be a little bit lower. But on average, it's about 26%. Toilet flushing then is 20%, and some of the others have actually dropped. So maybe what you can do is work on that 26% that's outside. So, a few things that we actually did for Sioux Falls. We developed an incentive program to replace your high flow toilets and washing machines with high efficiency units. And so we did a plumbing retrofit program where we actually rebated the cost for some of these units. One of them was a low flow toilet rebate. We started the program in 2003, and we were looking to change the high flow toilets that are generally around that 5 to 8 gallons per flush with units that are about 1.6 gallons per flush or less. Okay, that can be a significant amount of water reduction for a household. Okay, and so we gave rebates based upon the number of toilets, and we also included multifamily non-residential within that rebate. We also looked at high efficiency washing machines. We began again that program in 2003, rebated $125 per washing machine, because at that point in time the high efficiency machines were just coming out, so they were rather expensive, a little bit higher in cost than a regular washing machine, so we were trying to get people to move towards the high efficiency unit by giving them that rebate, and so I think we ended up rebating quite a few washing machines. However, now high efficiency is pretty much almost every machine out there. So there's really no reason for us to rebate anymore. So we ended that program in 2015. So we do not rebate for washing machines anymore. We also included rain sensors in 2005. We did that for residential and non-residential. What those do is after about a quarter inch of rain, it'll stop your irrigation system. The thing you hate to see is when it's raining outside, people are irrigating their lawn. If they got an automatic sprinkler system, you can put in a rain sensor and you can shut off that flow when you get about a quarter inch of rain. We also did a programmable timer rebate, and that program began in 2008. What we found, we actually started our odd-even restrictions in 2007, and what we were hearing on the street is a lot of the older timers on irrigation systems couldn't handle the odd-even. It was the months that ended in 31, and then you go to a 1. So there's 2 days there. If you have an odd address, you get to water 2 days in a row. The older timers couldn't handle that. Okay, so in order to get away from that, then we decided to go to a rebate program for programmable timers to help those people get new timers for their irrigation systems. Lawn watering restrictions. We first started this in 1991, and it was I guess you could say it was a quasi-watering restriction. We stopped any lawn watering from noon to 5 p.m. and really it wasn't. Part of it was to save water, but mainly it was because we were getting hit so hard with lawn watering that we couldn't keep our towers full, we couldn't keep our reservoirs full. So basically this gave us 5 hours of no lawn watering where we could refill our water towers, refill our reservoirs, everything, and then be ready at 5 o'clock when all of the hose draggers, basically those people that don't have irrigation systems, got home and started watering their lawns. Okay? So that was pretty much why noon to 5 was, but also you got to remember during noon to 5, about 50% of the water that you put on your lawn is going to be evaporated right away anyway. So it's just like, why? Why try to water? Between 1992 and 2006, we just did restrictions as needed. There wasn't anything special other than the noon to 5. And then in 2007, we first started our odd-even lawn watering. But we only set that from June 1st to August 31st. So there was a start date and an end date, and kind of what we found is that people were confusing, when does this start, when does it end? So we just kind of said, you know what, let's just go all year, okay? You know, and yeah, we did hear some things, well, who's gonna lawn water in the middle of December, you know? But here, it's year-round, everybody understands, you know, and it's easier for educating your public is that it's always odd even, doesn't matter, all right? We also did stages of watering restrictions. We looked at stages 1, 2, and 3, and it was all dependent upon the river flow. If you do a staged watering restrictions, have it something that people can see, people that, you know, that they can understand. River flow for us, I think, is great because people see the river. River flow is going down, they understand why we're going to a stage 2. Stage 1 is basically, you know, it's no watering noon to 5 and odd even, and otherwise you can water however you want. Stage 2 is when the river flow is less than 50 CFS, we go to once per week. If the river flow drops below 20 cubic feet per second as a flow rate, we have no lawn watering whatsoever. So we have set stages based upon the river flow. So if you want to set some sort of scale or different stages for lawn watering and further restrictions, find something that people, you know, can see, can understand. Okay? As I said, you know, before we had talked about water rates. Back early, late 1990s, we were on a single tier, and so everybody, didn't matter how much water you used, you paid the same amount per unit. In it looks like about 1999, we dabbled in a 2-tier system where the second tier was just a little bit higher in rates. Some of us kind of wonder, well, you know, why? You know, it really wasn't worth it. Okay. Now in 2003 is, and I think actually that's supposed to be 2004, we actually jumped up to a 3-tier, and then in 2006 we jumped up to a 4-tier. And so the first tier is anywhere from 0 to 700 cubic feet. So that's, I believe, equates to about a little over 1,000 gallons per month. Then we go from the second tier is from 8 to 50, or 5,000 cubic feet, and then we go from 51 to 150. And so the higher tiers are basically for lawn waters. So the more you water your lawn, the bigger your lawn is, the more green you want to keep it, the more you're going to pay. And actually, we found that this was a pretty good deterrent for people because they really didn't want to pay a lot of money to keep their grass green. Some people, really doesn't matter. I mean, you know, we're just going to shell out the money, it doesn't care, okay? But for a lot of people, you know, that extra cost really wasn't worth it. We took a look at freebies, okay? One of the things we looked at was low-flow shower heads, relatively cheap. Okay, well, you can get them, can save, you know, a significant amount of water, depends upon how often or how long your teenagers are in the shower. Okay, even though, you know, the more you yell at them, doesn't matter. Okay, they're still going to be in there for 20 minutes plus. Okay, low flow shower head, you know, yeah, okay, I might be able to let you shower a little longer. All right, so we gave those away. Those were available at utility billing office or down at our public works office. A nozzle for a garden hose. Again, relatively cheap for us, automatic shutoff, gave them away. And actually, I believe, Darren, they were quite popular, right?
Yes, and the reason we did that too is our ordinances called for if you want to hand water shrubs, brush, whatever you want to hand water, you have to be using a shutoff, a spray nozzle and a shutoff. So what we require, we were giving away so people use.
Yep. And then between the two shower heads is actually a little package of dye tablets. Those are what you can put in the back of your toilet tank. And if let the dye sit for a while, and if it shows up in your toilet bowl, you know you got a leak. So you should probably replace the flapper valve. Right? Public education. We went anything from bill stuffers. If you saw at the very beginning of the presentation, you saw our booth set up. That was for the Lawn and Garden Show, which I think is defunct now. I don't think they're running the Lawn and Garden Show anymore. But we had set that up in Sioux Falls. We've done radio commercials. We've done press releases. We've got information out on the website. And we actually have a watering complaint hotline. So your neighbor can turn in your neighbor. Okay, it's amazing how many neighbors turn in their neighbors. Okay? It is a very good deterrent. Okay? Would you say that, Darren?
Anonymous, of course, right?
Yes, of course.
Not even sometimes, not so. So they tell me who they are, who their neighbor is, and go get them.
And there are some people that, you know, they're running out around the neighborhood or walking or whatever, and they see people, and, you know, you may get 5 or 6 phone calls from the same phone number, you know, and telling you exactly who it is. And the thing you want to remember about that is follow up with the complaint. Make sure you somehow go to that individual and you say, you know, hey, we've got lawn watering restrictions. These are how you're supposed to follow it. Make sure you follow up on it. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at the results. How did we do? All right, the red line in there, again, is Sioux Falls population, and we've gone up, you know, 2.5%. The red bar is 2002, where we were at about 8 billion gallons of water. As you notice, 2003, 4, 6, we actually were over 8 billion gallons of water those years. So even though we started our conservation program, we really didn't do real well, at least on a total amount of water used. Okay? But if you start to take a look at in 2008, 9, 10, you know, 14, 15, 16, we have done a significant reduction in water usage over those years. You know, and I think we attributed those to, number one is, you know, replacing all of the toilets, replacing the washing machines, and then I think the big one is the water rates, the tiered water rates. Okay? All right, take a look at peak day water demands. Okay, again, the beginning red line there straight across is the plant capacity, 54 million. In 2012, we actually jumped the capacity of the plant up to 75 million gallons per day. But if you look at the red column or the red bar right in the middle, that's our 52 million gallons per day. We haven't even come close to that since then. Okay? You can attribute that to our odd-even lawn watering restrictions. Odd-even reduces that peak demand. Okay? Because under odd-even, if you have it set right and your numbers and your addresses work out right, about 50% of your population can water on a certain day. Okay, not everybody is watering on one day. Okay, only about 50%. So even though we have added 20,000 people, our water consumption has actually gone down. And I think we had a discussion just a little bit ago here before we started. We've actually added the population of Watertown to the city of Sioux Falls, and our water demands have not gone up. Okay, that's basically from our conservation program. So we have additional resources that we could look at. The American Water Works Association is a wonderful resource where you can get all sorts of books. And I'll bring these up here. I'll go through this first. But the Water Research Foundation, which is kind of an arm of the American Water Works Association, they tend to do all of the research. They have a lot of research reports out there. Some of them you can access. Some of them are behind a paywall, so it's, you know, it's hard to get to them. But some of them are actually accessible. Rural Water Association. Find out what they have. WaterSense from the Environmental Protection Agency. They, all of the high efficiency faucets, shower heads, dishwashers, all of those things go through EPA and actually get a stamp being EPA WaterSense. Okay, so they are classified as a high efficiency. And so whenever you're buying a new appliance, faucet, whatever, look for the EPA, look for the WaterSense symbol on the actual box, and that'll tell you that it is a certified low flow appliance. And then also, you know, the question that somebody brought up was, you know, where can we get more information about drinking water treatment and stuff? The EPA has a drinking water handbook for public officials, and this is what it looks like. This was actually published through the American Water Works Association. I think you can still get it there. There is an older version that is out on the web that you can actually print for yourself. And it goes through everything from source water to treatment to distribution to maintenance, to, you know, everything that you wanted to know about a water treatment system. And it's a pretty easy read. Okay, it's not extremely technical, okay, but you know, it is available. And then, again, through the American Water Works Association, there's a water conservation for small and medium-sized utilities. It is a book that is available, and I believe one of your operators is a member of American Water Works Association, so they get the member price. It's like $52, I think, something like that for that manual. Might be something good that you can actually acquire. And then the other one is the Water Conservation Programs, a planning manual, and that's also available through the American Water Works Association. And so those are some of the things that you can actually get. And then to leave you, we never know the worth of water till the well is dry. Okay? Now, do we want to go right into Darren? And then we can ask questions after that? That sound all right? Okay, all right. I didn't go too long, did I?
Very good. Thank you, Tim.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I've got a lot of pamphlets up here that are available to you guys, that if you want to take something, go right ahead, okay?
All right, my name is Darren Fries. I'm the Water Program Coordinator, City of Sioux Falls Water Department. My areas of responsibility, I run the conservation program, I administer the backflow prevention program, and I handle all the lease agreements for all the antennas on top of our water towers, and involved from a technical aspect of the reconditioning of the painting systems on the water towers. So I'm just going to go through the things that we've done that worked, give you some ideas of where we've been, what works, and then some ideas of what didn't, so that maybe we can avoid some of the pitfalls, or you can see the things that we did and do them better this go around. Here's to start off with, we did the new well source versus conservation, and when you add up how much water we got from 2 wells and how much they cost us, versus how much water we save each day with conservation and what we spent, it's about a 33% difference. And touching off on what Tim was talking about, that doesn't include your electricity, that doesn't include your chemicals, your production. That's water you already have that you're not pumping. You get to keep it. And it's far cheaper to just conserve it once you've made it than it is to actually find new. And when you have a community where you can't find new, conservation turns out to be the only thing you can do. And if you can keep it at a lower rate than what you could build, that much better. Here's it's a fairly old slide, but to give you an idea of what we spent our money on to get the conserved gallons, we spent a lot of money on washing machines for a lot of years. We got a lot of savings from them. We spend a lot on toilets, not so much on the rain sensors or the programmable timers. And right now in Sioux Falls, the rain sensor is a requirement on an irrigation system by ordinance. You can rebate it if your system existed before 05, or is it wait?
05.
We can rebate you, but anything after 05, if you put in an irrigation system, you're required to put in the rain sensor. Kind of going along with what Tim was talking about, population and water usage. Purple is what our average across the 1 million gallons pumped out of the purification plant. And then the green is the population. And as we've talked, we've gained those 20 or 30,000 people and haven't produced any more water out of the treatment plant. And then here's a good one we were just talking earlier about per capita. Here's an average, here's the per capita based on Sioux Falls. And you can see the population going up, and as it does, the per capita comes down because of the water savings. So I'll give you some examples of things that we do. And like Tim said, I run the program now, and I'm in charge of the irrigation complaints for violations of ordinance. So here's a broken sprinkler head. It was on a Saturday. I was in civilian clothes. It bothered me, so I pulled into the parking lot, walked into the store, drug the owner out to the sidewalk, and showed this to him. And what he said was, "Do you really have an ordinance about this? I really can't do this? What's the big deal?" So I got back to my office and on Monday, and of course, being me, I sent him a letter reminding him that we had visited, reminding him he was supposed to call me and tell me when it was fixed, and also quoted the ordinance that says, yes, you do have the responsibility to fix the sprinkler head, because we don't allow water wasting. This again, I think this was a Saturday or Sunday, so I pulled over, I saw this going on. That's coming off of one boulevard. They're watering a strip of grass 6 feet wide by 20 feet long, and there's the water coming off of that one boulevard. There's water running off another boulevard, and there's water running off another one. So I would like to know how much water was actually going into the grass. It was new sod, and when I put a step down into it, it was like a sponge. It just oozed water. Broken sprinkler head. I stopped on my way to work one day at 7 o'clock, got the address, got everything, went to my office, called the guy, and I said, you got a broken sprinkler head, how long has this been going on? Oh, I just turned my irrigation system on today. I don't think so. So our software is good. We've got some tools. We're working on some more customer engagement software. We're really good at narrowing down how much you use, what address you're at, when you started, when you quit. And we're trying to get better and get the customers more involved so that we don't have just these things like this. They would actually see this themselves. Here's a guy that thinks watering concrete is going to make it grow. And here's our water service team going out to the address after talking to the owner multiple times and physically shutting off the water to his house. So the violation of ordinance, the warnings, the letters tracked all through our code enforcement. And yes, by ordinance we have the right, and we did shut the water off. And then we sent him a letter stating all about it, all official, all whatever. The water superintendent said you can't just do the same thing expecting the same results. That's insanity. So put together a action plan for the consumer to not only get his water back on, pay the fees, but also tell him what's expected of him and hold him to it before we go out and turn the water back on. Procedures for handling lawn watering complaints. Basically, handle them all the same. If somebody calls in on our hotline, anonymous or not, I'm calling in this person on this address, he's watering every day. That's all I get. So I pull up the address, look at his usage, he's not. I don't call that individual. I don't send them any information. They're following the rules. You pull it up and they're using water every single day, they get a phone call from our office. And our phone call it's rehearsed. Because I don't want one person saying, well, you told my neighbor this, and now you told me this. So we keep our message consistent, and this is just something that we read every time we call. So the second one, they get a postcard. Third one, it's a letter. Fourth one, it's a door hanger. Fifth one, we got to go out and see it. We give people every opportunity to comply before we do anything like shut water off. We avoid that if we can. We find that, I'm going to go as far as 90% of our first complaints are handled with a one-on-one conversation with the customer. Whether it's the phone, you stop by their place, once they realize that, yes, they are in place and you will enforce them, that's typically all it takes. When people move to town, they get a welcome packet, they get the watering restrictions, it's right in the welcome packet. We send it out April through September. It's either inserted in your bill or it's on the back side of the envelope. So when somebody says, I've lived in Sioux Falls for 5 years and I didn't know you had these watering restrictions, sometimes you just kind of throw up your hands and say, well, okay, let's move on and figure out what we're going to do moving forward and quit worrying about the past. The last one, I would have to go out and visually see it. You're watering on the wrong date, or you're watering at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, snap a photograph, fill out the paperwork, and we tried to go with termination of service. Finding, I had a guy, I also do backflow, and another administrator said a requirement without enforcement simply becomes a request. So if you don't have, another guy, and I can't remember what state he was from, went up to a gate and a gated facility and said, you've been watering every day, you're wasting water, we're having a hard time keeping up. The guy takes out his wallet and starts throwing out $100 bills at the city people. What's it going to take to get you to go away? I don't want you here. What's the fine? Well, it's $100 a day. He goes, here, this should take care of the rest of the summer, now get off my property. Well, what did you accomplish? You got a few $1,000s to put towards what? You can't buy a well for, and if you're struggling and you can't make enough water, you need that resource. You can't just walk away with some money and say, okay, mission accomplished. You got to do something about the people that are using the water. So you got to put the teeth to the enforcement. When we went to our once a week or twice a week, we went as far as pulling off how many customers were ended with their house addresses to try to keep everything the same. And then once you figure out how many services there are and how many gallons everybody uses, you can kind of keep track of what you want to do with your once a week. You don't want to go to once a week and put, we call it Thirsty Thursday, and we call it the Sunday Special. because I worked in the treatment plant for 20 years. And every Thursday night at 5 o'clock, the towers went down and they did not come back because everybody watered before they went out of town for their vacation. And then all of a sudden, Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, everything started to crash. 5 o'clock restrictions, who cares? We're going to water. I've been gone all weekend, my yard's brown. And Sunday nights, you would have a hard time keeping up. So if we go to the once a week, you don't want to put your highest amount of people on your busiest days. And this is a good way for us to kind of balance out our load when we start losing the source water and we start getting dry. We want to make sure we're not putting too many people on the wrong days. Multifamily facilities. Got a good partnership in Sioux Falls with a lot of the big companies, with backflow, with water conservation. And in actuality, when I got hired 4 years, or got promoted 4 years ago, the public works director approached me and said, let's go find the colleges and the schools. Not so much, you know, this is kind of a big city thing, but, and find the apartments. Go find multiple toilets in one facility, because if one is good, more is better. So these people, I reached out to them, they started approaching me. One person replaced toilets, told everybody else. They started coming to me and saying, hey, I want the deal that you gave Joe. Here's a facility, it's 5 apartment units in Sioux Falls, and I can't remember, it was 102 or 103 units total. And this is their before and after and what they saved on this particular cluster of apartments of 100 units. The red is pre-retrofit, blue is after, the yellow is the savings, and the green by the month, and the green is for the year. So this 5 apartment cluster, 100 units, saved 3,108 units of water at 748 gallons per, 2.3 or 2.32 million gallons of water they saved in a year, to the tune of $15,000. And their sewer hadn't even been retrofitted into this because it's averaged through the winter, and we hadn't gone through an entire winter to get their sewer rates down, so that number was most likely going to go up. And now we have raised rates twice since then, so you're probably a couple of $1,000s higher on their savings. And their return on investment was inside of 12 months. Here's a motel that swapped out 92 toilets. The blue is before the retrofit, and this was just toilets. The multifamily was toilets and showers. So and then they fixed all their leaks and went through their faucets. So here's a hotel. Blue is before, brown is after. And the nice thing about this is you can see even when you get dry in June and July, your span stays the same because you're using toilets no matter if it's dry, if it's hot, if it's winter, if it's summer. You use those toilets all the time. And they reduced their usage just immensely. Saved them a lot of money. Another apartment complex. I mean, they went down to 1782 for units. And I mean, it just blows everything else away. No matter what their occupancy was the same. It was full that entire time. You got to think about occupancy when you start looking at usage. But there's one where they just absolutely dropped their usage. Now we're going to go on to a larger complex. It's 2 buildings, 60 units in each, 90 toilets or bathrooms in each side. So they approached us and said, our water bills are high, what can we do? Well, the building supervisor started looking, and what I want you to notice is the time of day where the blue and the yellow are. The blue is in the evening time, everybody's home, showering, doing what they want to do, their daily events, and the yellow is from midnight until 6 a.m. Well, they're using as much, if not more, water overnight than they did during the day. So they've got a problem. So here's the consumption off of one of the buildings after we talked to them about retrofits and rebates. They went through their building on one side and shored up all the leaky faucets, the showers, and the toilets. And they did it, and you can see we went from 547 to 487. The 51 was at the beginning of the month. So just look at the 2 on the left compared to the 1 on the right, the 487. That's one of their meters. This is the other meter. They went from 170 down to 92. And they didn't replace any fixtures, any faucets. All they did was shore up their leaks in their toilets and their faucets and their showers. So this is the other side where they shored up their leaks, they replaced their shower heads, and replaced their toilets. This is the usage off of one of their meters. And there is their actual billed units. They went from averaging upwards of the high 170s to over 200 down to 15.
15 units?
15 units. So on this side, they're in the 20s. Now they're in the single digits. That bill goes from, I mean, we got bills in the over 500, 400, they're at 238. And they're consistent. When you look at this, I mean, it's all over the place, and it's just how bad something's leaking, or who's home, or who's not, who's using. So they got their usage down considerably. They did both sides of their buildings, and they did the toilets and the showers in both, and their bills on both sides are less than 50%. They reduced by over 50%. The toilets in this facility were from January of '59. As Tim already talked, in 1992, the federal government passed a law that says you can't produce, import, sell toilets that use more than 1.6 gallons per flush. Back in '59, there were 7 gallons. So they took out 7-gallon toilets and put in 1.6. 5 flushes a day, 2 people in the apartment, 360, on and on and on. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of gallons. Especially with those, I will tell you, those tanks, you could have bathed a toddler in. You literally could have bathed a toddler in them. They were huge. Tim already covered this with the free conservation items. One thing I will tell you is it's very difficult, and I don't monitor these, the utility billing department does, but what I will tell you is you'll get the same set of 40 or 50 people who come in every single month and they want their shower head. And they want their spray nozzle. It's December, but they want their spray nozzle. So a lot of times, some of the utility billing department will say, okay, I know you were in here last month. It's not their right by ordinance. It doesn't say that you can only have one, but it doesn't say you can have, it says one per customer. So, and what I'll tell you is now this winter and last, we've pulled the moisture meter and the spray nozzle off of the display and put a sign on it that says, will be available again in April. We pull them in October, we put them out in April, and you wouldn't believe how many we did not give out over the winter time just because they weren't there for people to come in and grab. And the other unfortunate fact is how many of our city staff members have been to rummage sales and garage sales and seen them on the table for $3 and $4. And that is unfortunate, but yet I have walked by, I've walked my dog, take a walk with my wife, and I've been through neighborhoods, nice neighborhoods, and I see the spray nozzles, I see the moisture meters being used, and it's nice. So they are getting used. Not every one of them is ending up on a garage sale table. Tim kind of talked about the cost for this. And here is the tablets at 13 cents, the shower heads at $3.70, moisture meter, pretty inexpensive. And you just have to figure out, what am I going to get for what am I going to spend? What is it going to cost me, cost to conservation ratio, and how many do you want to buy? But when you start, if you start going down this path, have a way to distinguish who gets, or whether you send them to people, you offer them to people, track them, but then again, you've got man hours, you've got employee time, you've got a lot of things you've got to monitor, and is it worth somebody who makes the outrageous salary that I do to sit around and track, did we give one to Bob, did we give one to Jane, versus, okay, Bob, you want one, Jane, you want one, here, just have one. We don't rebate washers anymore. Washers dropped in price $250 to $300. Our ratio of what we rebated was too high, it should have been $80. So we thought, do we lower the rebate? Do we just knock them off? I went to all of the all the appliance places in Sioux Falls, and they started telling me that 6 or 7 of every 10 washers that came in that were being thrown away were already high efficiency. So 7 out of 10 of our washers that we were rebating at $125, we got nothing on our cost to conservation ratio. We weren't getting anything because they were already efficient. So there was a lot of factors, but this is a really good one if you ever want to think about doing washers, or if you ever think about not doing toilets. This gives you how many units of each we rebated in 2 years. But down below it tells you how much money we spent. And the bottom right one is how much it costs us to get 1 million gallons of conservation, and the top one is the gallons saved by said units. And when you look at the units being triple and the water savings being equal, it was really hard for us to keep rebating washers, knowing that we can get it so much better with the toilets. You got to have the toilets available. There's got to be enough of them to make it worth your while. If there is, there's the proof to be able to go get them. If you don't have enough, that's something you're going to have to sit down and say, you got to go, what was existing before 1992? Because you have to assume everything after 92 was high efficiency. However, in Sioux Falls, they had warehouses full of old style toilets. They were putting them in Sioux Falls through the early 2004, 2005, because the people didn't want to put it in low flow, they didn't like them, they didn't think they did the job, so they kept their old ones, and they would talk to the right plumber who knew the right guy, and they made some back alley deal, and they would buy one of those old 5-gallon flush toilets 10 years later after they've been off the market for 10 years because somebody had a warehouse full of them. So if you have, on average, 2.6 people, 5 flushes per day per person, and you take out a 3.5, because they were all made in the 80s and 90s, before this, 3.5, so we went best case scenario. At our current water and sewer rates in Sioux Falls back in 2015, and of course, they're up since. If you replaced one toilet in one home, there is your savings on your water, your savings on your sewer, and your savings combined. So if you buy a $150 toilet and you get that $75 rebate and you take it down to $75, your ROI is 1 year. I'm putting in a new toilet. I did talk to a gentleman who called me and said, are you going to come replace my toilet? No, sir, I'm not. Are you going to buy my toilet? No, sir, I'm not. Okay, well, if you're not going to come to my house on a Saturday and put in the toilet, whatever, I'm not. I like my toilet. It's fine. I don't care how much water it uses. It's comfortable. I am not replacing it, so you can take your program and on down the road. But then 5 minutes later, somebody called me and said, hey, how do I get one of these toilets? And how do I sign up for this? And they're like, just go buy one and send us the form and the receipt, and we'll rebate you as a credit on your water bill. We used to cut checks. That got to be very expensive. So now we just put the credit on their water bill and we give it to them that way. There's no check writing, no payments, nothing sent through the mail, much more efficient. Kind of hard to see, but what this is the city of Sioux Falls. Anything that's in green existed before 1992. So they would qualify for a toilet rebate. Everything in red has a rebate for a toilet on file with us. So that's what we can get, what we have got, and our goal is to send out a postcard to all of the qualifying addresses that existed but don't know about our program and say, potentially if you switch out your toilet you could save some money, you could do this, you could do that. The problem with that is we sat down with some of the big plumbing companies and they're telling us that in Sioux Falls, they looked at some of the neighborhoods and said 60 to 70% of those homes and toilets have already been replaced, but they just didn't rebate them. So you send them a notice, you spend the time, you spend the effort only to find out and you're not getting 19,000 toilets. You're only going to get a few thousand. It's a lot of time, a lot of manpower. And the other problem that we're starting to run into, and we're looking at it, is we get toilet rebates for somebody who puts on the form, yeah, the old one was cracked and I had it together with duct tape and baling wire and it just wasn't working anymore, so here, I want money to go buy a different one. It was designed to pull and replace to save as an incentive, where now it's almost just a, you replace it because it's broken and worn down. They're not doing it for conservation, they're doing it because it wore out. We still get the savings, but if it wears out, they were going to do it anyway. The multi-family ones that approached and said, hey, I really want to save, they didn't do anything other than look for a way to get their utility rates down. They were not doing a retrofit. They did a retrofit of their facilities to accommodate the toilets and accommodate the showers so that they could save the money. And then I have a couple, I'm going to go back to one of these where that I find humorous. I like that one. I've got some handwritten notes and some type notes that I want to share as far as get more into specifics. We covered the Thursday and Sunday special. Anybody in the utility department's got to know the Thursdays and Sundays, people use water just for the reasons that I said. We covered the rain sensors are required by ordinances. Okay, so our ordinance says you can hand water vegetation and grass by hand as long as you have a spray nozzle that has a shut-off mechanism. So that's great, because we don't want to be those people that say you can't. Problem is, you get a guy who'll do a patch of grass as big as his desk, and he'll be out there hand watering it. Then you drive by the guy who's got this entire building worth of grass, and he's out there with the garden hose in the middle of the day. I got a shut off, it's a spray nozzle, I'm following your rules and your ordinances. The ordinance says you may not irrigate your yard between noon and 5. Well, hand watering vegetation, irrigate, they put a distinguish between it, and if you don't cover that, you'll get the same thing. So what is hand watering, what's allowed for irrigation, define that and make it clear, make it cut and dry. Odd even. Our department handles my phone number is the hotline, right to my desk. Me, I'm the watering guy. So we'll go Monday through Thursday and get 3, 4, 5 a day. And then all of a sudden Friday is the 1st and Thursday was the 31st. I'll get 50 phone calls on a Friday because the people don't change their sensors. They don't have the new style of controllers. So we'll get 5 times more calls at the end of every odd month that starts with the next odd day than we do at any other time. And people just don't realize, hey, if you wait a couple of days, but we make 50 phone calls. If we get 50 complaints, we'll make 50 phone calls. Tim talked about the water loss during the day. It's actually upwards of 70% in the heat of the day to evaporation and transpiration. And a lot of municipalities that are aggressive with conserving water and irrigation actually go odd even 11 to 7. And I've been in heated arguments with people who have said, well, you called me at 12:30 in the afternoon, but yet you didn't call him at 11:30. It's been 80 degrees for 2 hours. It hasn't gotten any hotter, so why are you busting me at 12:30 because of the ordinance? Oh, I see, so you guys are just the police and whatever. You're gonna have to at some point defend why you go noon to 5, or why you go 11 to 7, or why you don't, and differentiate between how much water they lose at this time versus that time. Because I've been through a number of those arguments. We talked about the requirement. I read an article a couple of years ago about San Francisco. Went to low flow toilets, dropped their flows on everything. They have doubled or tripled their sewer jetting crews because of the dead spots, the low flow spots in their sewer system. Big problem for them. So what they saved on their water utility, they're spending a lot on their sewer and had to up their sewer. So I called the jetting or the maintenance supervisor for Sioux Falls and said, hey, we've been doing this for about a decade. What are you seeing out there? Nothing different. We've got a couple of spots, but it's a design place as opposed to just not much flow. And he goes, we notice that the flows are less, but we're not getting any more problems and we're not rotting or jetting any more systems than we did before we went to this. So there was one plus that we didn't have to go through. The discussion from Tim, he was talking about do we hook on and how do we get to this point and what do we do in the meantime? The conservation program was what got us to the Lewis and Clark system in 2012. We knew it was going to be sometime 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We didn't know when. And we had to shave off that peak and we had to get to the point where we could sustain a hot and dry summer before we got Lewis and Clark. And the conservation program is what got us there. It does take a lot of employee time and it does take a lot of employee power to run a conservation program, don't kid yourself. The right people in the right positions who want to see things through. I worked at the purification plant until midnight, the night we pumped 52 million. And I was there when the plant supervisor went over and started up a high service pump. Huge horsepower, 5 million gallon pump, and usually everything just explodes. Pressures come up, everything goes. He turned on the pump and the pressure leaving the plant went down. I mean, we had everything going that we could go. We were just getting nowhere. So when they said, hey, we're going to hire somebody to do conservation, what do you think? I'm like, I'm all in, because I had sat in that hot seat to where you're at the point to where if you have a main break, if you have an electrical problem, you lose one motor, you lose one of anything, you're done. Your towers are going to go dry and you're going to have to go to a watering ban and nobody wants to do that. Another thing we go through, watering after a rain event. Our ordinances say you can't waste water. And it mentions sidewalks and it mentions driveways, but it doesn't say, hey, you got a 1/4 inch of rain, why are you watering? You can't water, that's a waste of water. Yards need 1 inch a week. So if you get 2 inches of rain and somebody waters the next day, yeah, you could argue that, but if it's not in the ordinance, what am I going to do to them? And they're going to say, hey, I'm watering at the right time, I'm watering on the right date, why are you calling me? Yeah, so what if it just rained? To me, it's not wasting water, my yard's thirsty, I want to put the water down. So it's somewhere along the line, if you define what wasting water is explicitly. And yeah, you might bottleneck yourself, but you got to get it so that when people call, you can say other than, I don't know, because customers don't like, I don't know. Smart irrigation systems, expensive. There's a few in Sioux Falls. The city parks department uses one. The other thing, going back to the rain, is, well, a guy calls me from the west side of Sioux Falls to complain about a guy on the east side of Sioux Falls. Well, they're 5, 7, whatever miles apart. It didn't rain over there. He's doing what he's watering. This guy's saying, well, it's raining at my house. Why are they watering? Same with the parks. They have a location, and they were getting calls from across town saying, hey, why are you guys watering? It's raining. Well, it wasn't raining at the park that they called in, it was raining on their side of town at the park that they were looking at. Letters, postcards, phone calls, and protocol. Leads to enforcement, and do you do termination or fines? Just some things to think about for it. Bill inserts, TV commercials, TV interviews, envelopes that go out to the entire customer base, good ways to communicate. Watering complaints are way down since 2008. The more we publicize this, it gets easier as you go. The number of calls, the number of complaints will go down. And make sure your city buildings and parks are in compliance with any and all regulations, regardless if it's low flow toilets, backflow prevention, lawn watering. Make sure that before you point the finger at them, you point the finger at yourself. Leaky toilets, Tim touched on that. Big thing to remember. We got 19,000 eligible addresses for toilet rebates yet. Plumbers figure 65 to 70% have been replaced. We also have a program in Sioux Falls. The Water Division partners with community development. They'll go into a low-income place and say, we're going to work with you on your furnace. We're going to get you, a high-efficiency water heater to get your utility bills down. So what we did is we contracted out, and we have a contract for low-flow toilets. And community development comes to my office and grabs 5 or 6 every month or so, and they take them to these, in the inner part of town. They take out the old 5-gallon toilet and put in the 1.6. The city pays for the toilet. Instead of them having to go, they're not going to go to Menards and spend $150 and wait how many months to get it back. They can't afford that. So we win because we get a good toilet. We get the right toilet installed correctly, and then we mark the address down and we take it off of the 19,000 and say we don't have to contact them. Mission accomplished. And that way we know it gets done and it gets done right. Commercial style toilets. We tried to rebate those. We really tried to get that. Problem is you've got the flushometer and you've got the bowl. If you've got too small of this and too large, or too large and too small, job doesn't get done. You either end up flooding out and putting water out on the floor, or you end up having to flush it twice to get the same results. So how do you decide? We could rebate somebody for a low flow flushometer and a low flow bowl, and the minute we walk out, they just take out that flushometer and put in a higher volume one and say, yeah, they'll never know, and they're right. Or they could do the same thing with the tank, but the flushometer and the bowl come to about what a tank style toilet is. So they can actually piecemeal it and get the flows they want. And actually, if you rebate them for it and they switch it around, how are we ever going to know if we're not going to be knocking on everybody's door every single day? So the commercial flushometer style ones are really hard to rebate. They're nice if you can figure out how, but we haven't found a good way to do it yet. Those can be very difficult to manage. I got in bold letters, do not let low flow toilets scare you. They will flush. Sometimes you almost don't want to be sitting on them when they go off, because the amount of they move, and the thing is it's either the EPA or the AWWA has come up with a system, and they call it a MAP score. And it's basically they take solids and put in the toilet and they flush it, and how much do they remove until they stop. Ends at 1,000, starts off at 0, and if you get a toilet that's 7, 8, 900, 1,000, they will move more than your old 5, 6, 7 gallon toilets. They've got air assist, they've got fluid assist, they've got so many ways to move. Do not be scared of this new technology. 2-inch, fully glazed traps, they'll move more than the old style toilets will. Do not be afraid of them. Then, again, it goes back to clearly defining in anything you do for a rebate program, if you do, clearly define what you get, what you don't get, who gets it, how many times, track it, and put time frames on things. Don't leave it open-ended that where your program's about ready to wrap up and somebody approaches you and says, oh, by the way, I want 150 rebates for toilets or for washers that were bought 5 years ago, because my 5-year-ago budget's gone. I'm budgeting for the 500 I'm going to get this year. Well, now I got to do 700. You don't have the budget for it. So make sure that you can buy this and you can buy this, but we need the application before this within this amount of time so that you get it on the right budget at the right time. And then the other issue we had was audits. We used to have it to where if you wanted a toilet rebate, we had to come to your house and see the old one. And then we had to come back and see the one that was installed. And the reason we did that is to verify that it was pre-1992 and that you did put in a high-efficiency toilet. We changed our rebate forms, we changed our process, GIS and engineering pulled up all of the qualifying addresses. The problem so now we know when somebody calls me and says, hey, am I eligible for rebate? Yep, your address qualifies. Your home existed and you haven't rebated with us before. So we're not giving a double rebate and your address did qualify. I didn't have to go out there once. I didn't have to go out there twice. They have to provide us the information. What happened was you would get a nice elderly couple who would call us and say, come look at our toilet. Okay, great. So you would go out and look at it. And they'd say, well, we're not going to be home, so we'll leave it in the front yard for you. You come out and verify. Okay, great. So you go out and you verify, you leave, and then they put in the new toilet. Well, they call us 2 weeks later and say, well, you didn't take that old toilet. Well, we're not going to. Well, that would have been nice. Now I got to pay just as much for somebody to come and get that. What am I going to do with that? So it got to be a point where the customers really got upset with having to call us and have us say, you know, I'm kind of busy this week. Can I come out in 2 weeks? Well, I've got a plumber coming tomorrow. So be mindful of a really good way to be able to monitor what goes in and what goes out without having to put forth all of those employee hours, because it really, really does add up after a while. And it's an inconvenience to your customers. Last one, rain barrels. They're great. I know a lot of people that use them. We gave a lot of them away. Our environmental department, our sustainability coordinator still gives some of these away. We don't rebate them. We don't incentivize them, but we give instructions and tell people how to do it if they want to do it. Keep in mind that if you start rebating or paying for any of this, that you have a lot of issues with mold and mosquitoes. Well, let's get rid of the mosquitoes. Let's screen them. Okay, well, then when it overflows because your screen's plugged and floods your basement, what did you gain? And then we used to paint them. They didn't like it. Then we used to give them away just blue. They didn't like the blue. Jessica came up with a way to do a garbage can. So now you're brown or you're black or you're gray. And you can have them a little more, but you got to cut your heat trough. So just keep in mind that before, if you want to publicize and educate, fantastic. But before you start incentivizing, make sure that you have all of the pitfalls in your mind so you don't have somebody come back and say, well, you gave me money for this and this is what happened, now I'm upset. And I think that's it.
Wonderful. Well, guys, I can honestly say that was pretty interesting. There were some eye-opening figures you put up there and thoughts. So that was, I don't know, what'd you guys think? I thought it was great. Yeah, yeah. I can't thank you enough for showing up tonight and donating your time. I very much appreciate that. So I think maybe what we could do in the interest of time, I don't want to keep you here too late, maybe we can just kind of incorporate our question and answer session with them into our discussion as far as conservation goes. And this is where I want to start talking less and kind of turn it over to you guys. So let's talk about some ideas that you might have, or that they talked about, that we can implement, and questions regarding those ideas, and the floor is open.
No, I guess, sorry, jump out right away again, but first of all, I want to say congratulations to Sioux Falls. That's outstanding. There's no other way to say what you guys have accomplished, and so glad to have you here. But, you know, a couple things that caught me off guard, I guess, was the toilets. You know, I would have never thought that it was the highest user. I know it gets used a lot. Growing up, I know that my parents always told me something as a boy. It's that I'm sure all of you can figure out what that was with the toilets. But you know, when I look at it, I think there's definitely some options there for us to do rebates. I think that if we can do that, whether it's the toilets, the sprinkler systems, we've got a lot of new growth and a lot of residents that are putting in sprinkler systems, and shoring up our ordinances to make sure that we're prepared for that with put a rain sensor on and those types of things. I think there's some good opportunity for us. So that would be my thoughts. Is
Darren, are those ordinances out on the city website?
Yes. On SiouxFalls.org, I think it's under city attorney, and then it's like charter and statutes, charter. But it is. If you go to SiouxFalls.org, under city attorney's office, you'll find it. And it's chapter 50, if you want.
I think so, something like that. Yes. So if you want to use them as a reference, you know, they're right there.
I think the programmable controllers would be good too, because, you know, a lot of the issues that we had this summer when people got shut off is they said they didn't realize theirs were on the odd or the even day. And so I truly probably believe that, that they didn't realize that they were on an odd, they were not on the right day, and it's probably because of their controllers, the old controller without a rain sensor. So the programmable controller would have the right dates in it and stuff.
So I have a question in regards to that for Brian and maybe Tim. Is there grant money available for those, like you talk about the freebies and the incentive programs? Is there grant money or federal money that can help with that?
We can look.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
But I don't think that'd be a big dollar amount. It looked like what Sioux Falls had went through. I mean, it's probably a big number for us, but I mean, from the big picture standpoint, I don't know that that's that big of a number for us to consider for our water fund.
Do we have staffing to take care of it?
No.
That's probably the bigger issue, enforcement. That was kind of our issue more than anything this summer was enforcement, you know. We don't have people to enforce the day-to-day, you know, odd even restrictions.
What do we do for enforcement?
Right now, if we get a complaint, I'll call Raleigh. Raleigh will go out and take a look, and if it's confirmed that they're watering on not the correct date, they get a nice red sign in their yard.
I do like the red sign though, Raleigh. It's a nice touch. Honestly, I truly do like that because one of the impacts of that sign is now the whole neighborhood knows that it's being enforced. Where when you do a door hanger, it's not as visible. And I don't want to be the guy with the sign in my yard, but the whole neighborhood now knows. So I like that. I know it's kind of disheartening for those that get it in their yard, but I would be happy to keep with that. But staffing, I know is going to be something, and I don't know if there's on rainy days when the lifeguards aren't at the pool, maybe we can send them around.
The hotline, I think, is a good idea too. I mean, it comes down to staffing. Maybe we can have them call the city of Sioux Falls.
You guys need calls? Absolutely nothing to do. Happy to come home.
Stack it on.
He said he's sitting there with the outlanders.
That's right. I didn't even get a response out of that. Nothing I said, but you can just write.
Does Sioux Falls do anything besides the hotline for enforcement of the water?
We have set up that if there is a city employee, whether it's a fireman, street person, if they're out and about noon to 5 and they see a violation, they can log on to their computer or their phones and they fill out a form fillable PDF and send to me. And then I handle it on that, and I actually enforce those. Those are a little more, they're taken a little more serious when a city employee sees it. That's not, and you guys are talking about hanging signs. Tim's, I know he's been involved in a couple of heated, and so have I. Okay, well, you called me in, so it must have been Bob. So then I get a call from Bob on Joe, and then Joe calls Bob. And they go back and forth. Let's see how many we can stack up before they shut somebody's water off. So when it comes from a city employee, that's not a neighbor, that's not somebody that's irate, that's somebody that's out there doing their business who's been told by our leadership staff, when somebody's violating, send it to Darren, and Darren will act on it. They get communicated with, it's not a letter, it's not a phone. I call them and talk to them or I stop by the place, because it means a little bit more. So yes, we have our employees. They're not out looking for watering complaints. They're not out there looking for them. But if they happen across them, they do turn them in. And that is a good resource.
I think one of the first things we need to do is relook at the ordinance. I know we had the ordinance in place for the watering bans and the watering restrictions last year, but I think maybe we need to fine tune it and tweak it a little bit to make it a little bit more specific. And maybe take a look at Sioux Falls and make it a year-round thing so there is no question about when you can and when you cannot water. Set up those measuring guides to when you can't water at all. And make sure that all of those things are detailed out in the ordinance. The other thing that I thought about was there's probably not that many houses in Brandon built pre-1980 or 92 because it's a fairly newer town. So the rebating those couple hundred houses might go a long way to, you know, and that wouldn't take a lot of man hours if there's only, you know, 400 or 500 that, and who knows how many have been remodeled already, just to look at that. But I think my biggest takeaway from this is education. We need to make sure that we are educating our citizens on going through doing the the drop tabs in the toilet to see if your toilets are leaking, but making sure that the citizens are educated on water conservation. That's where we start. You know, we can talk about rebates and all that stuff, but what we can do now in the middle of winter, granted there's no snow yet, but in the middle of winter is education and get people prepared for spring and what they need to do to make sure that, you know, that they are conserving water. And that, you know, costs a minimal amount.
I think we can't leave out the businesses. I think that there is a lot of businesses that, if, I don't know, if we could have somebody with the city run through some of the establishments, but I can tell you from experience, there's a lot of waste there. Businesses with leaks.
I thought that it was interesting to hear about the non-revenue versus the build. And I wondered if there was any cross-check for the city of Brandon. Do we ever check that to see what the water that went through versus the water that was billed? And just
We do it monthly.
every month? Okay.
We metered all the water.
Averaging right around 3 to 7%.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
3 to 7% is what it's been averaging in the lower months,
And that's,
lower usage.
okay,
months, yeah.
okay.
And that's pretty
Thanks.
good.
Yeah, it's real good.
That's for wasted non-revenue water.
Yep.
Has Brandon ever considered the tiered water rates to incentivize not flowing water?
We implemented them 4 or 5 years ago with huge backlash from residents and businesses. We're talking about it again.
Yeah, in fact,
I was just approached, I think this gentleman in the back, you know, that was an idea he had, and I think it's, maybe I'm wrong, I think it's a good idea to definitely revisit that. I think especially with respect to businesses as well, not just residential.
So just for clarification, the tier was in effect and then we took it out of effect, or?
Correct.
Okay.
Historically, we've had a decreasing water rates, so the more you use, the cheaper it gets. We then switched to a block where it's equal, and then we switched to an increasing tier.
So a block per unit, so
Yep.
you use this amount of,
Yeah, it was just
Water
a
in
per
your-
1,000 gallons.
okay.
Same rate across the board, regardless of how much you used. We then implemented an increasing block rate. I think we had 3 tiers. We heard fairly quickly that customers were not happy with that, so then we went back to the single tier.
How long, I guess I misunderstood that. How long ago was that?
I'd have to go back and look.
I mean, was it, we're talking 20 years or?
No,
It
no,
was
no.
3, 4, 5
Yeah.
Okay.
years ago, maybe.
Okay, all right.
Did you hear backlash from residential, commercial?
It was across the
both?
board.
yeah.
Across the board.
Well, there is no silver bullet, right? I think part of the message from Tim and Darren is it's a lot of little things that over time have led the city of Sioux Falls to a certain point. So there's the short-term issues of what are we going to do next summer? But like Mindy pointed out, we've got this winter when traditionally there's not a lot of outdoor water use to help educate the citizens. And I think with what the city went through in this past summer, that's fresh in everybody's minds. That to do nothing is really not an option. Otherwise, we're going to live through next summer again, and nobody wants to see that. So, you know, to every cloud, there's a silver lining. So maybe the silver lining to the cloud of the issues we had this summer is we have this huge opportunity to look at all of these different options. Some will work better than others, and as you pointed out, we don't have as old of a housing stock as Sioux Falls, so the dramatic decreases may not be there, but that's one piece of the puzzle. Water, you know, rebates for stools, things like the rain sensors. What we do have is a lot of newer homes with underground sprinkler systems, so maybe there's greater gains to be had in odd even water restrictions, and also the rebates for the rain sensors, things like that, the programmable timers. But I guess that my takeaway is there's no silver bullet. It's a lot of things the city can do to lead up to something, but it's a process. It's a journey, not a destination too. That what Sioux Falls has done over the last 15 years is great. But looking at the graphs, it doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
So we need to be aware of that too.
So those rain sensors, the rain sensors that stop the water, the sprinklers, okay, that I think would be a real good incentive. Speaking for myself, I know I don't have one of these programmable sprinklers. Mine is, you either want to water on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because those are the odd days for that week. But you got to remember to do that every week, because you're going to have to, if you go away on vacation, you might as well shut it down, or you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
And I think that's the majority of the people in Brandon probably don't realize they're not doing the odd even. I know I'm at fault there myself, because it's happened to me. You haven't been to see me yet, but who knows?
You must have nice neighbors.
You got by.
What's your address?
Well, I think one of the other takeaways that I had is, holy smoke, software. I don't know what software Sioux Falls is using versus what we are, but to be able to dial in and see, hey, holy smokes, on this day we replaced a bunch of toilets and your water usage went down. A lot of utilities are doing that. Sioux Valley Energy, who most of us have, has an app, and I've looked at it and I can see down to the day of when was it really cold or when it was, really hot and the air conditioner ran. So I think that would be a very wise investment for the city to start looking into that, because it's the type of thing where we can start triggering on who's not conserving. I'm sure you can set up flags and alarms and bells and whistles and all that, but I think that would be something that would be just a phenomenal tool for us, and it's going to help Raleigh be able to forecast his peaks that much better, and all those types of things too. And it's more data that we don't have the staff to look at, but it's a stepping stone.
It all go back to the type of water meter that you actually have. Because your water meter has to be able to utilize that software. And I think what do they call it, an automatic meter reading, AMR system. So you have to have that type of system to be able to run that software.
Sure.
So in essence, it may go back to, I don't know what type of meters you guys actually have.
Use Neptunes.
Okay. And is
The
it an
encoder
automatic?
heads, they have the encoder heads on it.
Okay. So you may have the system available, it's just the type of software, or the software may be available, already, and you just have to set it up that way.
So do we have the capability of utilizing that software? Do we have the,
Not right now, we don't
Meters?
have the right meter heads.
Our meter heads are like a step below what he's talking about. The
Okay.
AMRs it would be able to read the entire town, just send a signal out and it would send all their signals back in.
okay,
Whereas ours, we have a computer that we actually drive up and down the streets, and it will read both sides of the streets and some of the other ones. On the next
oh, we can do that now.
That's what we do now.
We don't,
Okay.
we don't get that hourly tracking.
Okay.
That the smart meters have.
Right.
We don't have that
Right.
capability yet.
Okay.
It's my understanding we've got to change out the meter heads. We've already started with Neptune. They came out a couple of years ago. We're looking into it. We think it's a great technology because we get complaints all the time. We're not using water. It'd be nice to pull it up and say, yes, you are. Your toilet's running right now.
Yeah,
Because there are no toilets in town that run. We have no leaks. Everybody knows.
Is
So
there
we-
any way to kind of double up on some of that and truly shoot me down if this is unreasonable, but if you got somebody driving up and down the roads to gather data from what the meters are doing into their truck or whatever the case may be, is that an opportunity where we can say, hey, just broaden the scope of what you're doing, or if you're noticing water heads that are broken, if you're noticing that somebody is like seriously watering every time that you drive by, or is there an opportunity to kind of double up on some of that?
We only read meters once a month.
Okay.
So that truck's only driving. Staff, police officers and public works, everybody else, if they're driving around and they notice somebody that's watering on it the wrong day, yep, Raleigh gets a call or I get a call. So the entire staff does that now. If we're out and about and we see it, we report.
And I think that timing element too, I mean, just to hear that 70% of the water is evaporating, I think that's an educational point that we need to push however we communicate that, you know, maybe the best time to water your lawn is at 10 o'clock at night, for example. I don't know. I think there might be some mold or something problem if you did that continually, but,
Should be watering every other day, so.
Turn on about 2 a.m. Isn't that right there?
Yeah, the water
Somewhere
towers
right
will
in
be
there?
full, they'll be flatlining, we'll have the pressure regulated, so they're right up at that 36, 37 feet. And you'll actually see it go up, and then it kind of flattens out about 1, and at 2 in the morning, you will, instead of seeing this, you'll see a bend in all of the towers, the pressures. We gotta start adding pumps, and we have 2 o'clock in the morning, between 2 and 5, the water just whistles through Sioux Falls, between 2 and 5.
so people are watering in the middle of the night, and,
Yeah.
and I can't see a real problem with that except for the, I mean, what if they did it all at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? That would be worse, wouldn't it?
Right, because they're gonna lose it to evaporation, and that's the time we need to get full so that we have water for overnight.
Right.
We also have a saying too in Sioux Falls, as we gain more and more of the automated systems, what is it? Something about after dark. There's no restrictions after dark.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. When they run their system at 2 a.m., who's gonna be out there to police?
To enforce it, yeah.
Right.
Right.
So unless we get a call and we look at our system, we can see a daily reading, and we can actually set it to an hourly. We can see what people are doing every hour. Takes life off of our MTUs because it takes the batteries down quicker. We don't like to do it. But like for these conservation where people switch out their toilets or if they want to, we read every hour to let them know who's using, when they're using it, and how much. But you have to be able to, monitor all of that.
To enforce it. So I have an idea. This was an idea that came to me shortly after our last meeting, and you can shoot me down on this, it's okay. But what if, you know, I've kind of stepped into the social media world a little more in the last month. What if we did, this group, what if we made a video about water conservation?
I was actually thinking the same thing, in engaging high school or middle school.
Have the high school edit it for us, we all star in it, and talk about, you know, lawns need 1 inch a week and et cetera, this is the best time of day, and talk about some of the other measures that we're thinking of. What are your thoughts on that? What if we made a video, had the high school, you know, kind of do some of the legwork for us as far as editing and that kind of fun. You know, in other words, involve the community. If we involve the community, those kids are going to go home and tell their parents, guess what, I made a video today. Well, guess what? Those parents are going to watch that video because their kids were involved in it. And I think we get it on social media, we put it on the Facebook page. I don't know, what do you think?
I honestly think it's a great idea, and I've been thinking, you know, after every meeting, I think it'd be great if someone from this committee did a blog entry.
That's a good idea.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
on the city's website, and hey, this is what we talked about tonight, these are the takeaways, kind of things. Just like and everybody take a turn. That way, people get to know who we are, and then they feel like they can reach out to us. I mean, I don't think a lot of people may not know how to reach us that are on this water committee. So I think it's a great idea.
So where would we, I love that idea. Anybody disagree? I mean, you think what do you think?
So to put it in perspective, obviously I've been one of the most vocal on Brandon Askentel. One of those posts had a reach of 1,700 people. There's 2,500 people on Brandon Askentel now.
That's
So
huge. That's amazing. Yeah.
And in the
Honestly, why couldn't we just utilize that?
Yeah.
I mean, that group is already there, or, so.
So I'm going to make a decision. Who wants to write the first blog from tonight? Let's do it.
I'd be happy to.
Okay? So at the end of the meeting, we'll put our thoughts together, and I'll get that information to Tim, because I think it's a great idea. Yes.
Absolutely.
And as far as the video goes,
I think it's a great idea, and I'm all for educating people, and I think this is the time of year. I think what Kevin brought up, that watering ban is still on everyone's mind. They want to do the right thing.
Right.
But if they don't have the information to make the right choices, they're not going to make the right choice.
No time like the present. Like Kevin said, I think we need to take advantage of the the stir that's going on right now and run with this.
I do have a question for the gentleman from Sioux Falls. Your conservation program, you probably had to do a budget for it and all of that stuff. How did you go about that process? How did you establish what it was going to cost you to start up your program, and the cost in a year's basis, in a year's time?
I guess, I wasn't involved in that whole process, and so I'm not quite sure how we estimated that. If I remember right, what we said is we can rebate this many toilets, this many washing machines, and we had a cutoff. And so once they're gone, once the rebates are gone, that's pretty much what we did. For public education and stuff like that, it's, you're going to have a cost to put together a brochure, for printing. Are you going to mail it? What are you going to do? Are you going to put it in your water bills? Is all that set up right now where it's easy to do that? I don't know. You just pick a number, I guess. And if it's not enough, you add to it.
You begin with an estimate of, all right, if our goal is, all right, based on GIS or addresses, if we know we have...
The water that you...
If we have 500 homes that would be eligible for a toilet rebate, and our goal is, well, let's try and get 20% a year. Well, what number is that? And then if it's, well, we'll rebate up to $75 for all of those, that's the budget number. And like Tim said, when that dollar amount's gone for that year, then people have to wait until the next year. And it's actually a really good incentive, because then people realize, well, there's money out there, but it's in limited supply, so I need to get mine out, go get my rebate.
I'm also thinking like manpower hours. I'm sure the city staff had to increase however many FTEs to support that program. So that's something else that we kind of, if we're really thinking about that, is that something we need to think about as well?
If you want to go out to police, maybe hire a part-time summer student. And that would be their responsibility.
We've done that on dry summers, where we'll just hire somebody, give them a truck, give them the door hangers, and they go around between noon and 5, and they find the noon and 5 violators, hang the door hanger, bring it back. We got a tab part of it that we have, follow up with that customer based on what was left in the field. And for me to do follow-up phone call doesn't take much, but for me to get in the city truck and drive around and just go up and down the streets. But if you're paying, a college kid or a high school kid to go ahead and do that, when all they're really doing is walking up and hanging a door hanger and bringing us back the tab, it makes pretty good sense.
Okay.
We've done that in years past.
The numbers
I
don't
love it.
lie, and the numbers are very clear, and what Sioux Falls has done is absolutely stunning. If this is a priority for us, the money should be there. We should come up with the money to do this.
Yeah, like you say, I was blown away by some of the numbers you guys put up there. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing. And yeah, I'm kind of speechless about it. I agree. I agree. Anybody else? I know we're probably wanting to get out of here within 15 minutes or so. Yes, sir.
Well, I just wanted to comment on this topic of 1 inch per week on a yard to keep it maintained.
Uh-huh.
I find that amount way too excessive. I can water my yard twice a week. And when I get done mowing, I run over it quickly with a hand sprayer and hand spray it so the tips have moisture going into it. If you sit and you water your yard 4 times a week, your roots aren't going down in the ground like they should, and they're going to start looking for water. They're going to start going down further if you're not watering as much. If you don't water your yard for 2 weeks and you give it a big shot of water, it puts it in the shot, just like anything else. Like if you plant a tree, you're not supposed to water a tree when you first plant it, so its roots are going down looking for moisture. Anybody that has a underground water sprinkler system, this is getting to be a throwaway society, as everybody knows, and all they're doing is throwing away water. Because if they had to manually go out, set a water sprinkler in their yard, or a rain train, or whatever they call them, not near as much water would be utilized. So I think the underground water sprinkling systems are
I agree. In fact, Brian and I have talked a lot about that. You know, the fact that you water your yard every day or even every other day, you're not necessarily doing it good. It needs to search for water into the ground with its root system, and if you're watering every day, it's not going to do that, and that makes it more vulnerable to dying, you know, during stressful times of the year. So
part of
Yeah.
our education could be also,
yes,
you know,
ma'am.
how much is going on. If you water for, I don't know how long people water for, 20 minutes, half hour at a time, you know, how much water is going on your yard? Is that a half an inch? Is that a quarter inch? How much is that? So that people know, okay, if I water 4 times a week, I only need to let my sprinklers run 10 minutes a time because that's a quarter inch for 4 times a week. So that's part of that education. I have no idea. We don't usually water very much.
Well, I tell you what, we'll figure it out though, and
Yeah,
I
mean,
think
that
it'd be
would
good
just
for the video.
education.
Yeah.
It'd be good for the video to say,
Yeah.
hey, you know, when you water for 10 minutes,
Right.
you know, you're getting a quarter inch, or you're getting a half inch, or whatever it is.
They make little measurement wheels.
Part of our initial, in the program, we gave away a kit, that had the shower head, the toilet tablet, some information, a little wheel on how much water, and in there was a teeny tiny little plastic rain gauge.
Yep,
It just said in the yard. We stopped doing that because now we need moisture meters. So
yep.
basically, hey, my yard looks dry, I need to water it. It doesn't look dry, do I need to water it? You insert the moisture meter, and it gives you a level, and based on your eyes, based on what you think your health is with your grass, okay, it needs grass and it's at this point, so do I need to water it tonight? No, the moisture meter says I can go another day or two. So we're using that differently, but we used to give away the rain gauges, worked very well.
Yeah, and that's something that if we're, whatever we're trying to present, if we give a measurement for it, so if we're saying you only need an inch of rain a week, if we give them something to measure that inch of rain, that's gonna be huge for us. And those things have gotta be dirt cheap. I mean, it's a little plastic deal, so that would be great. I know we're trying to be really proactive, and one thing kinda caught my ear, and that's, cities looking to start going from 11 to 7 for the no watering. If we're gonna be changing our ordinances and trying to make some changes, now is the time. People are gonna be upset already that they can't water as much anyways, but I would really move to look at making that the standard, 11 to 7.
Ours is 10 to 6.
10 to 6? So,
10 a.m. to 6
10 a.m. to
p.m.
6 p.m.
so,
No watering, and then outside of that, stick to the odd even, is that correct?
yeah, absolutely.
I don't
Yeah.
disagree with what everybody's saying, but the biggest thing is that the education piece is very important, but what everybody's failing to look at is the enforcement piece. You can educate all you want in the world, but if you don't have any enforcement to back that up, you're going down the wrong direction. So I totally agree with the education piece, but there has to be something with a little meat on it to say, this is what's going to happen if you don't follow what we're trying to do here, because water unfortunately is a commodity that is very, very precious. And we have to really look at that and say, what are your enforcement going to be for this if you violate it? Is there going to be a financial impact? Because that's what speaks loudest to people is a financial fine. And then does it lead to, how many times does it take to get your water shut off in Sioux Falls? What is that going to look like here?
We do second violation. First violation, you get a tag in your yard. Second violation, we turn you off.
And that's pretty aggressive.
That's aggressive, yeah.
That's pretty aggressive.
And then you've got to sign an agreement. Fortunately, you didn't have anybody that got shut off. Everybody complied once we posted the sign. Once you get shut off, you need to come in, you'll sign an agreement just like Sioux Falls does. You understand the rules, you're not going to do it outside of the rules. Then we'll turn your water back on. If there's another violation, we will shut you off and then we start fining before we turn the water back on.
Do you think we could reverse that and fine first and then shut the water off?
Actually, you get a lot of compliance when you turn water off.
But you said
To
we
put
didn't
it
have to turn
bluntly.
anybody's water off this year? So,
I mean, just like the example, I'm sure that we have some folks here in town that if we showed up and said it's $100 a day, they're going to start shelling $100 bills for us.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal, but when you shut water off, if we could figure out a way to shut sewer off, it'd be even better. But yeah, you shut somebody's water off, they're calling right away. How come my water's off? What do I need to do to get it on? And they will comply. So we're very aggressive if we get that second violation.
Do we have anything, sorry, Wellington?
I know the education thing is all great. I agree with you. You gotta have some teeth with that. I've always said that. If you just keep telling them, slap their hands, say, don't do that, it doesn't work. One thing I think you guys are all missing on the education side of it too, Sioux Falls probably doesn't deal with it a lot, is your reverse osmosis water softeners and stuff, people tend to set them to generate, and when they're using more water, they're going to tend to regenerate more often, which if there's only so many people using the water inside of the house, you only need that thing to soften so much. The other side of that, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, one of our employees got called to a house where the softener had plugged up, and he actually found out that he has his outside spigot
Oh, jeez.
to his softener system.
Oh, no.
So if you want to conserve what you're
Move
spraying
to-
out of your yard and not have to pay for that salt because you're watering your yard,
Mhm.
your trees, your bushes, that's another thing to educate people on. Softeners,
Mhm.
softeners are like cars, you need to do maintenance on them.
Mhm.
I don't care what anybody says, you don't, I mean, there again, you said it too, it's a disposable place.
Right.
A lot of people, they'll get a new one, let it go until it doesn't work anymore, and then they throw it away and get another one.
Yep.
They can be serviced.
Would you be willing to go back to the reverse osmosis piece again and share a little bit more?
I'm not a big guy on softening, so I can't speak to it real well. I just know that there's a salt and then there's an ion change in there, tends to make the water softer. That's,
Water softener, ion exchange is what you have in your house.
you're putting it, the
Like the
salt
collagen.
into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that just softens your water.
Takes some of the
Takes some of the
minerals out of the water.
So
you don't
reverse
want-
osmosis is more of a filtration. People typically use it for drinking, where your water softener is for everything.
Okay.
The problem I have with reverse osmosis is if everyone in town gets worried about water quality and they're not going to drink the water and they're not going to let their pets have the water and all that gets into whatever term you want to use, and everybody puts an RO system in, our usage is going to go sky high. Because an RO system for, I think the statistics are, for every good gallon of water you get out of it, you throw 4 away.
Wow.
So if you start thinking about that potential impact to our water infrastructure, it's huge. I mean, huge, to the point where there's no way Raleigh's going to keep up next summer. If 20% of the people in town put an RO system in, it's going to be an impact. And that's one of the fears I have, and the backup plan, why I brought it up at the beginning, and is we really don't have a backup plan right now. And if some of this stuff starts trickling into play, there could be bigger impacts than we even had this past summer. I mean, we've got public attention right now, and if it turns the wrong way and we have too much, I'm going to call it panic, then there's big problems for us, and to the point where Raleigh's going to be scratching his head and running out of the treatment plant or putting a cot in, I don't know which, but it's not going to be great, you know? Yeah, so you guys will have a cot. We'll get that in the budget for you. Yeah. Soft, perfect.
So I think those are some very good points. I want to try and wrap it up. I know we're running way over here. So just to kind of recap, you know, first of all, the reason we formed this group was to take ideas to the council in a more educated manner than, you know, maybe one person getting up and talking about it. Maybe we can talk about it as a group or stand behind a principle as a group. So I guess what I would ask is that we be vocal about, we be persistent and vocal about these issues and topics. And here's a few that I wrote down. I think I kind of caught everything under these items here. So something that we can take to the next council meeting. Enforcement, rebate programs, of course, education. Education kind of encompasses all of these items, but education, freebie materials like the drop tablets and rain sensors and that type of stuff. Enforcing all of this upon businesses as well, not just residential. Taking advantage of the momentum that we have, and trust me, there's a lot of momentum regarding this issue right now. I don't mean just conservation, I mean water in Brandon. And I say we hop on this train, take advantage of it, because it can do us a lot of good. Software, meters that can utilize, you know, smart sensors, making a video for education, the blog entry, which, Tim, you're officially in charge for the first one, okay?
Sounds good.
Getting high school and students involved, possibly in the summer, to ride around, checking, enforcing sprinkler, odd, even schedules, that type of stuff. So those are some of the ones I have, and again, in the interest of time, if I miss something, if you want to add something to this list, please email it to me or to the group. And I have to apologize. I'm going to be out of town for the next 4 days, and I won't be too reachable because I've got some work stuff to deal with halfway across the country. So, but when I get back, I'll get back on this, and I'll try and stay in touch with everybody. Does anybody have any other items they want to discuss regarding this? Any? Nothing? Okay.
Can people write on the Brandon City's Facebook page? No? Okay, so maybe it would be a good idea if whoever is writing the blog emails that to someone so it can be posted on the city's Facebook page or the city's website?
Yes.
So that this information is the same. So
Yes.
that's just kind of a seamless thing?
So maybe what we can do, that's a great point, maybe what we can do is, Tim, if you want to come up with some of these bullet points, email it to the group, and if anybody says, absolutely, I don't like that, or absolutely, I want to add this, let's kind of keep it, try and keep it less than 2,000 emails, but try and keep it under control, but try and communicate as a group about what we want to post. Let's post it on the blog, and then we'll send it to the city and let them post it. In the meantime, again, once I get back from Florida, we'll all get to work on getting some contacts made for this video. And again, I think if we all star in it, who knows? Maybe we can reach people that way. So anyway, well, again, in the interest of time, number one, guys, I want to thank you for coming, Darren and Tim. I think that was phenomenal, and I think people really enjoyed it. And that was, I'm speechless at some of the information that you provided. It was wonderful. Second of all, I said I had some announcements. So as far as next topics go, I wanted to discuss this, but I think maybe we'll have you email some of this to me. Our next meeting, which is December 12th, it's 2 weeks from today, a Tuesday, I have the director of the Department of Natural Resources committed to coming and giving us a presentation. I'm totally excited about that. I think that's going to be awesome. I initially talked about the EPA. Well, this guy is actually kind of a little better than having the EPA come in. The EPA is more of a government agency. The closest office is in Denver. They don't know our state regulations. They're not specific to each state. Whereas Mark from the DNR is. He deals with South Dakota. He knows the regulations that we need to follow and the guidelines. So I think he's going to be fabulous. Following that, 2 weeks after that, I want to bring this up, would be December, I think it was 26th. I'm guessing we don't want to have a meeting the day after Christmas. So I want to ask this of you. I've already contacted our state geologist and some hydrologists that have committed to coming in December 19th, which is the next Tuesday after our December 12th meeting. In other words, there would only be 1 week in between the Tuesday meeting. Is that okay with everyone? Rather than December 26th. I spent literally hours on the phone with some of these geologists and hydrologists, and we've got this is going to be very interesting. There's a lot of information coming our way that I think is going to really be beneficial, and I'm very excited about it. Pat Hammond has given me a list of names as well for hydrologists, and I'm contacting them. But anyway, Derek Isles, you probably know him. He's committed to December 19th, so if we're okay with that, I will get this on the books. Sound good? Okay. And then after that, we'll just kind of go from there. So what I want you to think about is a next topic. I think we've talked all we can probably about conservation as a group. I'll be diligent about bringing these issues to the council, but I need your help. I can only do so much. I need more voices, more people to bring these ideas and thoughts, and obviously we can't do everything, but I think we can do a lot, and for the money that we have, I think we can definitely make some changes, but I need help from you guys and from the rest of our community, so. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
If we move the meeting to the 19th, would that move every consecutive meeting 2 weeks, or would we go back to the same schedule?
That's up to you. I mean, again, this is a group effort.